Hello everybody, happy solstice wherever you are in the world. You know, if you're here in the northern hemisphere, you're celebrating the peak of the year, the fullness of summer. And if you are in the southern hemisphere, you are celebrating the winter and the return of light. So this is a powerful energetic turning point. And I actually felt guided the other day to make this video today on the solstice as a transmission, because I'd felt, you know, the fear rising. A lot of people have been asking me, you know, what's going to happen over the summer, all of these retrogrades, all of these eclipses, the Lion's Gate opening. You know, it is going to be a summer of deep transformation, but it's not something that we need to go into fear and hysteria about if we know how to work with the energies. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about that today, and really interesting that we picked the solstice to do this. And what has happened, as soon as the solstice energies peak, we have these solar flares. There's a storm going on Mars. So I'm speaking about these energies that kind of electrify our nervous system and create these uncomfortable feelings in our minds and bodies and emotions as they're actually happening. So it's just perfect timing. So the solstice is a turning point of the year wherever you are. It marks a shift in the energetic tides. Ancient astrologers would actually create a chart, a template of the sky at the solstice and equinox points to give an indication of what celestial currents that they would be working with over the coming 3-month period. So it's very interesting that the energies of today, as the Sol Star moves into the sign of Cancer, into the sign of the Great Mother of Water, and squares Chiron, that this is going to be a frequency that is going to be very prominent throughout all of summer. Cancer is the womb space. Cancer is the past. It's our connection to our ancestral lineage. Chiron is the wound. And Chiron in Aries, where he is at this time, he's going to go retrograde next month and he's going to head back into Pisces for a bit. But at the moment, he's still in Aries. And Chiron in Aries is all about reclaiming our power, reclaiming our individuality. It's also very much about bringing forth new healing modalities, new ways of working spiritually and shamanically, and also about resurrecting the masculine, which is going to be a huge theme of the summer with Mars going retrograde. We've also got Venus on the North Node in Leo, highlighting the eclipse points. So today's frequencies are really giving us a brilliant insight to what is going to be rising this summer for us to work with. So it's really interesting to take note of how you're feeling, what is rising up for you as these light codes, as, you know, the soul scriptures, the blueprints, the mandalas, pour down through the cosmos today as the sun crosses that solstice point and opposes the galactic center. So we could say that the solstice energies are an initiation into this summer that I have been calling the love revolution, due to Mars's retrograde in Aquarius and a few other things that will be going on. So please excuse me if I have to keep stopping and pausing the video a little bit today. I've got hay fever, so I'm coughing and sneezing as I'm speaking. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is the eclipses, because everybody hears the word eclipse and we know that there is going to be some big changes on the horizon. We know that transformation is imminent, and of course we go into fear, particularly when the sun is in Cancer and we're all looking for that security and stability. But the truth is that we collectively experience an eclipse season around every 6 months. So it's not an infrequent energy. It's something that has always happened. You know, the ancients always marked the eclipses as well, and before, you know, there was a bit of fear around them, because they feared that the sun wouldn't come back. So we still have that kind of primordial fear within us as well. It's that fear of darkness, it's that fear of not knowing what is on the horizon and what is coming, which is a very human thing, particularly with the instability that we live with in the world at this time. So eclipses come to shake us up, to shake us free. Without eclipses, everything would become very stagnant. We would remain stuck in the situations which are stifling our soul. Without eclipses, we wouldn't be able to experience the changes that we need to accelerate us forward on our life's purpose. So the phrase that came to me when I was tuning into this was, if we can embrace the fact that change is beautiful and change is necessary, we don't need to go into that fear and hysteria that sometimes gets generated around eclipse seasons, and particularly with this one, because we haven't got just 2 eclipses, we've got 3 in a row, so it's a very long period. The eclipse tunnel will open with a Cancer new moon solar eclipse opposite Pluto and part of a grand water trine on the 12th of July, so in about 3 weeks' time. It will be punctuated in the middle by a very electrifying Aquarius lunar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse, and it will close around the time of the Lion's Gate on the 11th of August with a Leo new moon solar eclipse. So you can see that we have quite a long period where we're going to be stuck in that eclipse corridor, and eclipse corridors or wormholes are liminal spaces. We're in between time, we're in between reality. The old hasn't yet left properly. We're purifying, we're detoxifying, and we are walking around blindfolded. You know, we're doing all of this internal work, we're doing all of this clearing, but we don't yet know what is going to manifest. So we have to surrender to the unknown during eclipse seasons. We can see, you know, where they're going to fall in the birth chart. We can see how they are aspected and how they might play out on the world field, but we can never exactly know what an eclipse is going to bring. So the more that we can surrender to that, the more that we can be willing and ready to let go of those things which are holding us back and not fight and cling to the things that we do feel make us feel secure, the easier our journey through eclipse season can be. You know, in our reality, everything is constantly dying, rebirthing and being reborn, you know, even down to the cells in our body. Change is something that we cannot avoid. It always makes me think of that old saying, the only permanent thing in the universe is impermanence, and that's something we really need to be willing to embody and embrace this summer. So let's have a look at the eclipses and you know, the alignments that are going to happen around them and what we can expect. So as I said, the first eclipse is going to be on the 12th of July, and that is going to be in the sign of Cancer. So the nodes are still in the signs of Aquarius and Leo, but because of the way the alignments are falling, this eclipse will actually fall in the sign of Cancer, the Great Mother, and this will be a tester, a taster of what we can expect when the nodes do shift into Cancer and Capricorn later this year. And we know that this Cancer Capricorn axis, this divine mother versus the patriarchy or the divine father, is so highlighted at the moment We've got Saturn in his home sign in Capricorn, we've got Pluto up there, we've got Lilith still lingering around up there at the moment, we've had Mars coming through and he'll be diving back in, and so we've got a lot of energy up there in Capricorn. So this summer, as the planets move through Cancer, we start to come back a little bit into balance, and we start to focus on the point of evolution, the north nodal energies, which will be coming into Cancer later this year, and the nodes of Pluto and Saturn are already in Cancer at this time. So the Cancer really is our collective point of evolution alongside the north node in Leo at this moment in our history. So Cancer is this energy of nurturing, of unconditional love, of compassion, of flow, of divine feminine, which is being challenged at this time by the kind of patriarchal, business, hard, cold energy that we are seeing so prominently in the world through the situations that are happening at this time. You know, we can really see this rising with, you know, humanity coming together as a collective and wanting to particularly protect the children, which is a very, very Cancerian thing. So this eclipse can really highlight this polarity a little bit more, and it can also, you know, initiate us into one of the main lessons of this summer's astrology, which is the clearing of the ancestral line. So all of us, you know, we carry the wisdom of the ancestors in our bones, in our blood, in our bodies. You know, their energy beats within us. And we also carry the energy of our genetic lineage, our mother line, our father line. And this is an energy that can play out in our life in various detrimental ways. We can see that certain toxic frequencies will manifest down family lines, and it is up to us as the way showers to break these chains, you know, to liberate us from those ancestral patterns which aren't serving us, you know, which we don't want to pass on to future generations. We don't want to keep perpetuating these cycles of abuse, of abandonment. You know, some people carry very, very painful genetic karma, and this summer is really going to be about clearing and cleaning that, and also learning how to love and nurture and honour ourselves in the way that we wish we had been loved and nurtured and taken care of as children. So that Cancer eclipse can really bring that to light. Around the time of that eclipse as well, that grand water trine energy is building, and there will also be an earth trine forming as well between Venus, who will have just moved into Virgo, Uranus in Taurus, Saturn in Capricorn. It won't be exact, but it will be very close, and we'll be able to really feel it. So we have this kind of Merkaba double triangle shape forming in the cosmos around the time of this eclipse as well, which opens us up to receive great amounts of healing from the divine feminine as well. You know, water and earth are very, very feminine energies. So that's the first eclipse that we will be experiencing. The second is going to be the full moon lunar eclipse in Aquarius on the 28th of July. So this is an electrifying eclipse. It's in Aquarius, it's conjunct Mars, who is going to be about midway through his journey, through his retrograde journey through Aquarius at this time. It's going to be in square to Uranus, who is of course the modern ruler of Aquarius. So we can see a huge amount of, you know, jittery, electrical, impulsive energy surrounding this eclipse, and this is going to be a south node eclipse. Lunar eclipses on the south node are always indicative of letting go. So this is going to be a profound time of releasing those Aquarius related issues that are no longer serving us. So this can be fixed mental beliefs. You know, Aquarius is a fixed earth sign, and although they are very open-minded, they can become quite rigid in their thinking. So this can be about releasing old belief systems. This can be about liberation. You know, Uranus, Aquarius, energies of freedom, of independence, of autonomy. So there could be a huge need around this new moon to liberate ourselves. Perhaps we're liberating ourselves from those ancestral patterns. Perhaps it's more relationship orientated. Aquarius in particular rules over groups and friendships. So there's a lot of disharmony going on already with Mars moving through Aquarius at this time, and people, you know, perhaps changing their belief systems, not fitting in with the same groups and circles and friends that they have done for many years, and, you know, people breaking free and liberating themselves from that. Aquarius also rules the internet, so this can be a very, well, actually all of Mars is retrograde, and Aquarius can be a very tentative time for online interactions. You might have noticed this rising already, you know, because people are very stuck in their beliefs and they want to do Mars, they want to be the warrior, they want to defend them, you know, they think they're right, and obviously there are so many different opinions and things that get shared online. It's a playground for the ego. So that's something to really be aware of, particularly around the time of the full moon. But this can also be a time where we see those humanitarian issues which we are all so touched by, which we are all so anxious about at this moment, because I think that if you are on this planet at this time and you're not feeling anxious or sad about what's going on in certain parts of the world, then, you know, perhaps you have your eyes closed. And this can be a particularly volatile time for these kind of issues to erupt. So we might see another kind of bout of uprising, of revolutionary activity occurring around this time. There can be a sense of, you know, as a human collective, we don't want to do the South Node. We don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. And of course, Uranus, Aquarian energy, is the visionary. It's about building the new earth. So it's what do we need to let go of so we can fully build this new conscious fifth dimensional planetary energy that we are all working towards. So that's going to be the second eclipse of our triple supermoon eclipse journey. And the third and final eclipse will be the Leo new moon solar eclipse on the 11th of August. So like I said, kind of in the middle of this Lionsgate period. I'll talk about the Lionsgate a little bit more later on. But this eclipse is going to be in square to Jupiter. It's going to be conjunct retrograde Mercury. So because Mercury is going to be either retrograde or in his retrograde shadow for most of eclipse season, this is showing us that a lot of the work we're going to be doing is mental repatterning and reprogramming. And again, when Mercury is retrograde, when he's in the underworld, it's very similar to the eclipse tunnel energy, where we are kind of in the shadows, we are in the subconscious, we're in the liminal space. Nothing feels very clear. So this can be highlighted by this eclipse, but also we can find ourselves doing deep recalibration around the Leonine frequency. So we've got a lot of energy going on up in Capricorn, up in Aquarius, that's opposing this kind of Leo Cancer energy, which is all about the heart, all about the personal connection, all about self-love. So here we can see maybe, you know, as we move between the Aquarius eclipse and the Leo eclipse, we can start seeing where we've shut our heart down, where we have closed ourselves off to love. All of the revolutionary activity that will be going on around this summer is beautiful and it's much needed, but we have to be coming from a space of love. That's why I was calling it the love revolution. So we can be liberating ourselves, we can be shedding the old layers, but we must be sure that we are coming from the heart space, the heart chakra, which is ruled over by lovely Leo. And the ultimate goal of all of this transformation is to do healthy Leo, which is to embody authentic self-expression. I always love the analogy of Leo as the sun being surrounded by the other planets. They just revolve around him just because he shines. He just is who he is. He's shining, he's sharing himself, he's sharing his gifts without any expectation, without any need for approval, which for me is the epitome of healthy Leo energy. And that's what this eclipse will call us to do. Can we be in our heart? Can we be true to ourselves? How open are we to love, to connection with other people? So relationships will be a very big focus this coming cycle as well, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So that's the eclipses. So let's not go into panic, let's not go into fear. Let's know that we create our own security within us. Life is changeable. The only thing that we can control is how we react to the changes that are happening. So the other big thing on everybody's mind is the retrogrades. So this is another thing that can be quite often overhyped because the outer planets, you know, from Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Chiron, some of these planetary bodies will spend almost 50% of their cosmic journey in retrograde motion, and it's not unusual for them all to be retrograde over the summer. In fact, it's quite usual. They tend to kind of station retrograde around April time and direct around September, October time, and that's in perfect sync with the planetary cycles, because the period where we do have most retrogrades throughout the summer is that time, you know, when we're not really planting new seeds. We are tending to the dreams and desires that we planted at the beginning of the year, at equinox. We are building, we're cultivating, we are tending and tilling the fields of our dreams, so to speak, as the ancestors would have tended the crops during this time. You know, they wouldn't have started reseeding the fields in the middle of summer. They would have tended to what they'd already planted, and they would have been ready to harvest around Lammas, around Samhain time, the harvest festivals. So we naturally fall into the same rhythm and cycle if we will allow it. So although at times this summer we will have between 6 and 7 planets retrograde all at once, this isn't particularly unusual. What is unusual is Mars retrograde, because he only spends about 20% of his time retrograde. He only goes, I think he goes retrograde least of all the planets. It's about once every 2 years. And of course Mercury, you know, he always seems to be retrograde. He spends most of his time retrograde, so that's not particularly unusual thing either. So what is really prolific, really important over the summer is Mars retrograde. And he's going to be having quite a journey. You know that he's going to be conjuncting the South Node 3 times. That's already happened once. It's going to happen again, I think the 20th of July, and then later on again in September. He's going to square Uranus. You know, that's going to be an orb for most of his retrograde journey, and it's going to be exact 3 times. We're going to have this Aquarius lunar eclipse in conjunction with him. So he is the big player the big energy of the summer alongside the eclipses. So Mars is the divine masculine. He is the sacred warrior of the heavens. And although Mars doesn't make the same retrograde journey as the other personal planets, Venus and Mercury, where they actually make a conjunction with the sun and go into the vault of light as they're coming in and out of the underworld, Mars retrograde is still a time of the divine masculine going through the underworld, going through this resurrection and recalibration process. And this is something that perhaps because I am Mars ruled, being in Aries and having a lot of Aries and Scorpio planets, because of course Mars is the ancient ruler of Scorpio too. This is a message that I have been receiving very, very clearly during visioning, during dreams, that this is really a period of rebirth for the masculine within our world. And of course within each of us, you know, we all have a Mars and a Venus. We all have an inner masculine and feminine. So there is going to be a huge awakening of masculine consciousness for sure during this period, particularly as it's in square to Uranus, the great awakener, who's in Taurus, the sign of the Earth Mother, the divine feminine, Venus ruled at this time. So there's a huge thing going on here between the masculine and feminine. But Mars is that masculine aspect of us all. He is the warrior within. He is anger, passion, sexuality. He is rage. He is motivation. He is the energy that gets us moving. I read a quote once that says, you know, Mars will tell us what will get us out of bed in the morning, but will also, you know, reveal what will get us there in the evening. So he is that energy of what motivates us, what drives our desire. So we're all going to be dealing with these themes over the summer. You know, how do we use our power? How do we assert ourselves? How consciously do we use our sexuality? And of course, with Mars going to be retrograde on that south node, that point of past karma, there can be a hell of a lot of anger surfacing. Mars, when he goes retrograde, acts like he would in Scorpio. So instead of his usual kind of forward charging, brash, assertive Aries energy, he becomes a lot more subversive, he becomes a lot more covert, and we can suppress our anger, we can deny it, we can try and hide it. But really during this period, what we want to be doing is finding healthy ways to channel it. And I like to view anger as suppressed power. Quite often when we are angry, there is some area of our life where we're suppressing our power, where we are not being the fullest expression of who we can be, where we are suppressing ourselves in order to please others, you know, where we are trying to keep harmony instead of being ourselves. And also this is a good time for us to reframe our thoughts around anger. I think we are often taught that anger is a really bad thing, you know, angry people, we don't want to be one of them, you know, we don't want to be a negative angry person. And, you know, particularly for the feminine, anger is a real no-go area. But to me, anger is sacred. It's a tool, it's a fuel that we use to motivate ourselves to create change in the world. And as I said before, if you're not feeling angry at the moment, if you're not feeling a little bit hopeless and helpless about the world that we live in, then really we need to take a deeper look, because this is a collective moment where the scales are tipping and change needs to happen. And quite often anger and outrage at what is in front of us can be the agent of propelling us towards that. So if you do find yourself dealing with a lot of anger, at this time, then find ways to channel it in a constructive way. And of course, you know, many people have been noticing already with Mars square Uranus, there's a real kind of Shakti, Kundalini fire, a sexual energy that's awakening within us all as well, where we are liberating ourselves from shame around sexuality and the body. And this is another thing that I've really been receiving a lot of dreams and visions about, that it's time for us to all, you know, break free of these old societal constraints and constrictions around our bodies, around our sensuality and sexuality. And of course, you know, this is Mars in Aquarius. He is demanding equal rights for everybody. He can also, you know, be starting a little bit of a sexual revolution over the summer. So again, that's an energy that needs to be really channeled with awareness. It might be a good time to start doing some kind of exercise, some kind of Kundalini yoga if you are feeling yourself becoming overwhelmed with all of these feelings. I really feel like, as well as all of the other revolutionary activity over the summer, we will also be seeing a lot more of things like the Me Too movement, because Mars is also going to be colliding with Lilith, the dark feminine, who's also going to be moving into Aquarius. So this is a huge energy that is almost, you know, gives you the visual of a volcano erupting. It's almost like we're all standing up, we're saying no more, this is unacceptable, we need change, and we are willing to be part of the change. So it can be a really positive energy when it is directed in ways that support the global community instead of, you know, becoming more divided and arguing and, you know, seeing the differences within ourselves, you know, whatever political parties we're aligned with, whatever spiritual groups we're aligned with, you know, the imbalances between the masculine and feminine. You know, this is time for us to unite, to come out of that energy of separation if we wish to really build this new reality. So this is going to be a really interesting energy throughout the summer, because we do have these retrogrades going on, particularly Mars and Mercury, that will be slowing us down. But eclipses tend to rapidly create change. So there could be a sensation of some areas of the life feeling really heavy, moving really slowly, being really frustrating. You know, particularly, of course, check the area of your birth chart where Aquarius is, to see where this, you know, amazing opportunity for change is occurring, because Mars hasn't been retrograde in Aquarius since 1971. It's quite an unusual thing. So some areas will be, you know, there will need to be a lot of extra energy and effort expended, and then other areas will be moving so fast that we can't keep up. So it really is sinking into moving and flowing and turning with the wheel of change rather than resisting and fearing. So the other major event of the summer is the Lion's Gate. And the Lion's Gate is another period of time that has been worked with and celebrated since, you know, the beginning of time as we know it, really. The Lion's Gate opens from around the 24th of July until the 12th of August. And the Lion's Gate opens when the sun is in the constellation of Leo, and when the blue star Sirius, who is often referred to as the light of our cosmos, begins to rise alongside him. So it's almost like there are two suns in the sky, a golden one and a blue one. And of course this is mostly associated with the ancient Egyptians, who equated Sirius with Isis, their mother goddess. And the rising of Sirius ran alongside indicated the flooding of the Nile, which would water the crops and, you know, bring the harvest of abundance. But it's really interesting to note that it wasn't just the ancient Egyptians that aligned a lot of their monuments and temples with the rising of Sirius. Here in the UK, you know, there's good evidence that the sacred landscape of Glastonbury and the Tor is aligned with Sirius. Avebury, Stonehenge, you know, a lot of the long barrows and ancient megalithic monuments we have here. Newgrange, in Tara Island, the temples in Mesopotamia. Since before we have any historical records, Sirius has been worshipped as a energy of divine feminine wisdom and a symbol of the harvest. This is often called the Sothic cycle when we think about the Egyptians, because the rising of Sirius to them also indicated the new year. So it's quite possible that the ancient ones, our ancestors, would have begun planting their seeds, their crops, the same as we do, you know, metaphorically with our intentions. Well, unless we're farmers, and then we possibly do it with our seeds as well. As Sirius disappeared from the horizon, which would have been, you know, April time back in those days, and that they reaped their harvest as the Lion's Gate opened and Sirius rose again in the skies around August, September time, you know, times have changed due to the precession of the equinoxes. So this is a star cycle that has been revered by our ancestors, by the ones who went before us for millennia. So for us now, in the reality that we live in, the rising of Sirius and the opening of the Lion's Gate is seen as a portal, an opening in the wheel of the year where we have greater access to the wisdom of the star tribes, to the love and abundance and nourishment of the Divine Mother. So again, this is a time of year when there is a lot of high frequency energy flying around, and it's particularly amplified this year because of the eclipse, the Leo eclipse, falling on the 11th of August as well. So we will still be in the eclipse tunnel. Mercury will be retrograde as we go through the Lion's Gate. So there will be, again, you know, this deep process of death and rebirth, of having to let go of the old before we can build the new. Of course, the harvest is the time when we cut the crops down, we cut away the debris of the old year. We're going into a time of darkness as we approach the autumn months here in the Northern Hemisphere. So this can be a time of endings as well, but also a time of deep awakening. Please excuse the cat, she's obviously a little bit excited by all the talk of the Leo energy in the Lion's Gate. So anyway, it's a time of heightened frequency, of absorbing more light codes, of absorbing the energies we need to fuel us on the next phase of our soul's journey. So it's a hugely potent time, and as we know, when lots of light comes in, when there's lots of cosmic change, it can really affect our bodies, our minds, our emotions. And I know some of you are going to be really feeling this already today because of the solar flares that we're having this solstice. So it's a good time to talk about how to move through these energies with grace and awareness, rather than, you know, spiraling into fear and spiraling into chaos as the changes come in. So I am going to share with you a few things that I do when I know that there is going to be a influx of light energy, a few ways that we can work with these themes that are arising over the summer, and how we can cope when our nervous system becomes overloaded, because as sensitive souls, some of you may identify as empaths, when these changes occur, when these frequencies hit us, we can become very overstimulated. You know, our cortisol is firing, we get all out of balance, we get the wired and tired feelings, and that can be just due to the influx of light, or it can be due to the trauma that is triggered when unexpected changes happen, or when something comes out of our subconscious that we need to deal with. You know, we go into the fight or flight, we go into the anxiety. You know, I think many of us at the moment are having periods where we feel really connected, a little bit wired. We are having lots of downloads, lots of awakening moments, which is followed then by a period of almost going offline, where it's like the body shuts down and we can't cope with any more. So we have to, you know, withdraw, go within and rest until we feel our energy almost rebooting itself again. So that can be an uncomfortable cycle to live with, especially when you are, we're living in this 3D reality. We have jobs, we have homes, we have children, we have businesses to take care of, but also there's no avoiding that we are affected by the movements of the planets, by the turning of the seasons and cycles. It's really important to remember that although it appears from our 3D point of view, we are not separate. We are made of the same particles, of the same atoms, of the same minerals as the stars, as the planets, as the heavens, as the earth. We are a living, breathing part of the cosmic ecology, and as such we are deeply and profoundly affected by the movements and energies that ebb and flow here. So I'll talk you through a few pointers of, you know, how you can perhaps best prepare yourself for the incoming shifts. So I'm getting the message that it's really good to start doing these things now. So by the time we get really into the eclipses, but by the time the energy starts to really pick up pace, that we are, you know, grounded and secure in our bodies. So the first thing, and perhaps the most obvious, is diet. And this can play a huge pivotal role, as I've discovered myself. When we are so sensitive and we're already being bombarded by higher frequencies, if we are ingesting allergens, if we are continually filling ourselves full of toxins, it will make it much harder for the emotions that are rising to flush themselves out of our body. So I know this is quite a simple point, but I'm always surprised at how often people will say to me that they feel rubbish with these energies, yet they are still filling themselves up with food that isn't good for their bodies. And you know, we can perhaps get away with that a bit more during times when the frequencies aren't so high. But when we are going through these portals and tunnels and wormholes, it's really important that we do try and keep our vessel as pure as possible. And I like to look at this rather than an energy of denial, is as an act of sacred self-care. So I am choosing to love and nourish myself by putting good things into my body, rather than, you know, saying, oh, you can't have that, or you can't have this, or, you know, you're bad for eating this or drinking that. So just simply removing things like dairy and wheat and sugar and caffeine, or cutting down on them, can have a big impact. Obviously drinking more water. I find that if my adrenals feel burnt out, like they often do in times of high frequency, that eating a lot of vegan protein nuts or protein shakes of some kind can be really helpful to kind of stabilize me. Quite often I will take fish oils, magnesium, supplements like that, just any way that I can take care of my body. And everyone's bodies are different and everybody has different needs for rest and relaxation, so it's really being embodied during these periods and tuning into yourself and what do you need. You know, some days I think, oh, I need some coconut water, you know, perhaps the body's crying out for potassium, and you know, other days it might be spirulina, perhaps you need some iron. And the more you are aware of what your body is crying out for and give it to it, the more stable you become during these periods. So the other thing that I find really important, not just during eclipse periods, but in general, is daily practice. So daily practice is a meditation, a prayer, a spiritual activity, like perhaps yoga, or sitting in front of your altar and lighting a candle, talking to the divine, something that you do every day to anchor yourself in, to connect yourself to what is going on in the cosmos, to come back into your sacred space, into your heart, into your womb, to really know and process what is going on for you. And I always find if I ground myself as part of my daily practice, I will feel a lot better as the day goes on. So the way I like to do it is the way I open most of the circles. You know, perhaps many of you who are watching this video have been to one of my online Zoom gatherings where I, you know, guide us to sync our energetic roots into the core of the Earth Mother and then send that energy up into the galactic center, the womb of the cosmos. And that for me works really well, and if I do it every day I will feel good. But the trap that we can often fall into is that we start feeling okay. We do it for a week and we feel good, we feel great, so we think, oh, I don't need to do it anymore, and then we gradually start to feel rubbish again. So consistency is key, and again, it's whatever works for you. Like I say, some people like yoga, some people will sit in prayer, in communion with the divine, some people might like to sage themselves, but whatever it is, it's just having that moment of, okay, I'm a spirit in a human body, all of this chaos is going on around me. How can I tune back into myself? How can I come back into my body and know what I am feeling? Another thing I like to do on a regular basis is sea salt baths, and that is particularly good if you are a holistic therapist, you're a reader, you're a healer. It just keeps your energy really clear. The salt absorbs all of the toxins. Quite often I will throw some crystals in there as well, and I always find it really important to affirm sovereignty of my own energy fields, call my own energy and power back to me, which is also something that can be part of daily practice as well. But I just find that alongside a little bit of Palo Santo can really help when you're sensitive to energy and you're absorbing stuff off people all of the time. Another thing that is really key during this period is acceptance of the shadow. So this is particularly important with Jupiter now, you know, going to be moving direct in Scorpio from the 10th of July onwards. So we know that it is inevitable during this period that shadow material will rise up, that there is possibly going to be anxiety, there is going to be reawakening of old patterns, perhaps old ancestral patterns, you know, things that have been hidden for a long time. We know that we are not going to feel good all of the time. You know, sometimes we're going to feel elated and excited with these energies. Sometimes we're going to be fearful of what's going on in the world. Sometimes, you know, there might be tears, there might be anger, and all of that is okay. There can be a lot of stuff being said around this time of how you need to be positive, you know, how you need to be constantly in a high vibration. But really, when we do that and we're denying those darker parts of ourselves, we're denying our pain, we're not letting it move through us, and we're suppressing it, we are just separating ourselves even further from who we are and who we want to be. When we, you know, try and focus exclusively on the light, what we do is just stuff all of that shadow material down, and it is going to erupt at some point. And the more that we suppress it, the bigger the explosion is going to be when it does eventually rise to the surface. So it's about allowing ourselves to not judge ourselves when we don't feel great, not judge each other when we're not feeling great. You know, let's have some compassion during this time of huge change, especially with Mars going retrograde, which can make us all, you know, a little bit impatient and frustrated. Let's have some compassion for ourselves and other people and what we are going through. So embracing the shadow, embracing and loving and holding every emotion without judgment is really helpful during any time of pain, any time of transition. If you know this, if you've ever had a panic attack, if you've ever had anxiety or depression, the more that you try and suppress it or cover it up with positivity, the bigger it gets. But as soon as you accept it and turn to it and don't run from it, it will start to dissipate. And it's the same for every emotion. So another key here really is knowing your birth chart. So this is why I make these videos, because I just think it would be amazing if everybody intimately knew their own birth chart and could see how the energies were going to play out and affect them. It would bring so much more ease and acceptance to the journey. So the more that you can open up to studying your birth chart and you can say, oh, okay, this eclipse is going to be in my 6th house. I know that this is a time where I need to be extra careful with my energy, with my health, so I don't get burnt out. Or, you know, this eclipse is going to be in my 8th house, so I know that there's going to be some buried stuff that's going to come up, so I need to give myself extra space to process. By knowing these things, we are more prepared and more accepting. You know, we understand what's happening on a cosmic level. We understand it as part of a greater cycle and journey. So the more that you can, even just getting to know the houses of your birth chart where these events take place can be really, really helpful. So, and the key, as I've said in the beginning, to all of this energy, to working with all of this, is acceptance of change. Knowing that there is an order to the universe, you know, there is an eternal cycle of change, of death, of rebirth. Everything moves and flows. Nothing stays the same. Everything is metabolizing and changing all of the time, and we are no different. So the more that we can be open to that, the more that we can be flexible in our attitude, and the more that we can trust the process and know that if there is something that we are having to let go of during this period, that eventually something better will come in and take its place. It is the law of life. Everything changes and everything grows. We will always have fallow periods, and we will always have periods of growth. So whichever one you're in, the more acceptance that you can have, the easier your journey through this time will be. So I hope that helps give a little insight into how you can best move through this time. And I just want to break down a couple of the key themes for you that will be arising over the summer. I've touched on them a little bit anyway, but I'm just going to reiterate them now. So one of the major themes is going to be clearing the ancestral line, breaking free of the karmic and soul contracts that tie you to the past. Breaking free of the repetitive cycles that move through your life, that move through the generations of your family. And it's not only our own lineage we're clearing. As I've said before, we, through our bodies, are clearing eons of old conditioning, old programming, particularly around relationships, sexuality, and masculine energy or patriarchal energy at this time. So be gentle with yourself, and perhaps some of the stuff that you're feeling is not always just about you, but it is stuff that is moving through the collective. The second major theme is liberation, and I've touched on this a lot already, but we are liberating ourselves from those things, those relationships, those situations that stifle our soul. But with Mars retrograde, this comes as a note, with a note of caution, because we don't want to act in tempestuous ways. We don't want to act irrationally and disconnect out of anger or out of, a drive to be free no matter what the cost. So we need to be conscious in the choices of what we are letting go of. Relationships of all kinds are highlighted throughout the summer. So, as I said, Aquarius is very much to do with friendships and groups. The Cancer energy is very much about family, the ancestral line. And Jupiter in Scorpio is very much about our intimate romantic relationships and connections. So there can be breakdowns during this time, during these high energy periods. It's either breakdown or breakthrough for many relationships. So some can ascend to a higher level of commitment, others may have to be let go of. And this works in tandem with the other major theme of the summer, which is seeing the truth. So we may start to really see the truth of the relationships and the connections that we've been involved in. We may start to see the truth of the spiritual pathway that we've been following. We may start to see the truth of, the job or purpose that we've committed to that is not serving us anymore. So it's a time of uncovering the shadows, not just within ourselves, but within the